You know that feeling, right? You're at a party, you meet someone, they say their name, and like, bam, it's just gone instantly.
Oh, absolutely. Or, you park the car, run your errand, come back, and zero idea what level you're on. Happens to everyone.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating. You feel like, oh, my memory's terrible. We kind of think you're either born with a good memory, maybe even a photographic one, or you're just not.
Right, like it's fixed. But the sources we've been digging into, especially insights from people like Nelson Dellis, the memory champion, and Dr. Sanjay Gupta, the neurosurgeon, they totally challenge that idea.
They really do. They argue that memory isn't some, innate gift. It's actually a skill, something you can train.
Exactly. And the techniques, they're not some modern invention. They're often really ancient methods, surprisingly simple at their core, that anyone can learn.
And that's what this deep dive is all about. We've pulled together the key ideas, the really practical stuff from these sources, looking at this blend of personal stories, the science behind it, and these actual techniques.
Yeah, the goal isn't just theory. It's about unpacking the tools you can use right now to remember, well, pretty much anything. Better names, where you parked, maybe even stuff for work or study.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Why do we forget simple things so easily? Like, why does a name vanish, but you remember the face?
Well, the core idea in the source material is that our brains aren't really set up to easily remember abstract stuff. Think numbers, random words, passwords.
Things without context or a hook.
Exactly. They lack sensory detail. They're just abstract symbols. But what our brains are amazing at remembering is anything involving our senses, especially sight and spatial information, where things are.
Ah, okay. Like remembering your childhood home or a specific smell or how you felt during a big event. Those things are vivid.
Precisely. They're packed with sensory data, emotions, locations.
Eh.
So the problem isn't usually a bad memory. It's more like we're feeding our brains information in a format it doesn't naturally like.
Like trying to save a picture as a text file.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. So the key, the big insight, is you can translate that boring, abstract info into the language your brain loves. Sensory, spatial, often kind of weird experiences.
And the tool for that translation is imagination.
Imagination is absolutely central. And this leads directly to the foundational technique that comes up again and again, see, link, go.
See, lingo. Okay, break that down. What's see?
See is about taking whatever you want to say, a name like Baker, and creating a really vivid, concrete mental image for it. Don't just think the word baker.
So, like, picture an actual baker in a big hat.
You could. Or maybe something weirder, a giant pretzel doing a tap dance, a walking bread oven singing opera. The key is to make it memorable, and often that means making it bizarre.
Right. The sources really push that make it impossible, maybe even a bit grotesque or highly emotional, like something really disgusting or funny.
Absolutely. Weird sticks, mundane fades. Think about a pizza. You could just picture a pizza. Or you could picture a pizza crawling with worms, or maybe it's scalding hot and melting through the table, or smells incredibly foul. Adding strong sensory details and emotions makes it much harder to forget.
Okay, I've got my bizarre image. My singing, walking bread oven for baker. What's INK?
LK is where you attach that image to something solid, an anchor point in your memory. If you just create images, they float around. LK gives them a place. You connect your bizarre image to something you already know and can easily recall.
So if I just met Mr. Baker, his face is the anchor. I link the oven to his face.
Exactly. His face is the natural cue. Or if you're memorizing a list, the anchor might be a specific spot in your house or an item on a list you already know. This taps into your brain's incredible spatial memory. You're giving the image a file location, basically.
So the singing bread oven is now, like, perched on Mr. Baker's very prominent nose.
Perfect. Now for the final step, grow. This is where you make that connection really strong and dynamic. Joe involves adding sensory overload, SO, grotesque absurdity, GA, and movable attributes, MA.
So GA, MA, run those by me again.
Sure. So sensory overload, pile on the senses. What does the oven sound like? Off-key opera, maybe? What does it smell like? Burnt cheese? Feel the heat coming off it, hear the sizzling?
Okay, got it. More senses.
GA, grotesque absurdity. Dial the weirdness up to 11. Maybe the oven isn't just singing, it's also juggling flaming baguettes. The more ridiculous, the better.
Juggling flaming baguettes. Okay. And MA.
MA movable attributes. Make the image interact with the anchor. Don't just put the oven on his nose. Maybe it's baking tiny pretzels that are shooting out of his nostrils, or steam from the oven is making his ears wiggle. Action makes it stick.
Wow, so it's less a picture, more like a crazy multi-sensory mini-movie happening right there on the anchor point.
That's exactly it. The sources have this great example for remembering a long number string, like 24 digits. just looking at the numbers. Hopeless for most of us.
Yeah, no chance.
But translating it into a story, like an elephant driving a tractor, maybe George W. Bush moonwalking and flicking a cigarette onto a turtle
Hmm.
that's playing a guitar
Yeah.
that has a mushroom on it. Suddenly, that bizarre story is way easier to grasp than the raw numbers. Your brain eats up the story.
That really shows the power of turning abstract into concrete, right? And making it weird. So, see the crazy image, link it to a known anchor, and go with senses, absurdity, and action. That's the core.
That's the bedrock. See, link, go. But,
Yeah.
if you're just linking things one after another for a list, it can get a bit clunky, and you often have to recall them in order.
Right, like if I need item 7, I have to mentally go through 1 to 6 first. Not always practical.
Exactly. So for lists and sequences, you need more structured storage. And the big one, the classic technique, is the journey method. You might know it as the memory palace.
Ah, yes, the memory palace. Sherlock Holmes uses that, right?
He does in the adaptations. It's a very old, very powerful technique. You use a place you know really well, your house, your walk to work, maybe a park has a mental filing system. The different rooms or landmarks become your anchor points.
And then you place the things you want to remember using those E plus JUCO images at specific spots along that familiar route.
Precisely. You mentally walk through your palace. As you arrive at each location, you see the bizarre image you place there, and that triggers the memory of the item. Dr. Gupta apparently used this with Nelson Dellis at a historic house, the Swan House, to memorize a bunch of U.S. presidents really quickly.
Wow. So for my grocery list, maybe the singing bread oven for flour is on my doorstep. Then I go inside and see chickens laying giant jewel-encrusted Faberge eggs on the living room couch.
Exactly. You walk the familiar path in your mind, and the bizarre scenes pop up, reminding you what you need. Or for a recipe, you could journey through your kitchen. Garlic cloves swinging from the light, soy sauce bubbling volcanically on the stove, a block of tahini being karate chopped at the knife block.
Okay. Journey method memory palace leverages spatial memory for sequences. What was the other one? The PEG method.
Right, the PEG method. It's another way to organize lists, but its big advantage is random access. You don't have to go in order.
How does that work?
You use a list you've already memorized perfectly, your pegs. These become your anchors. It could be numbers 1, 10, maybe with rhyming images like 1 is bun, 2 is shoe, 3 is tree. Or it could be the alphabet, where A is apple, B is bad, C is car, or even the days of the week.
So I have these pre-memorized pegs. 1 bun, 2 shoe, 3 tree.
Yeah, you know that list cold. Then, to remember a new list, say milk, bread, eggs. You link the first item, milk, to your first peg, bun, the second item, bread, to your second peg, shoe, and so on, using C-Link-A-Go, of course.
Okay, so I'd picture milk splashing all over a giant cinnamon bun. Then maybe that singing bread oven wearing enormous shoes. And the Faberge eggs hanging precariously from a tree.
You got it. The source mentions using alphabet pegs, like linking King Offa to an apple A, or King Egbert to a bat B smashing eggs. Or using days of the week pegs. Tuesday is tooth, Wednesday is wedding. So your dentist appointment on Tuesday gets linked to a giant tooth, maybe dancing with a dentist. Your haircut on Wednesday is linked to a crazy wedding scene where the hairdresser is styling the groom.
And the key difference is if I want to remember what's happening Wednesday, I just think Wednesday, wedding peg, and boom, there's the haircut image. I don't need to think about the tooth first.
Exactly. You can jump straight to any item. So journey method is great for order and flow. Peg method is great for random access. Both super useful.
Okay, this is great in theory. Let's make it super practical. Back to that parking garage nightmare. How does ceiling go help me find my car?
Okay, yeah, the classic, and the source is stress. This is usually less a memory fail and more an attention fail. We're already thinking about where we're going as we park.
Guilty as charged. My mind is already in the store.
So step 1 is crucial. Pay attention right when you park. Look at the sign, level 4, zone B. Then apply the technique. Your car is the LINK, the anchor.
Right. Link to the car. Makes sense.
Then see the location info as an image. Let's say you use a number-shaped system where 4 looks like a sailboat.
Yes.
You vividly see a huge sailboat smashing through your car windshield.
Whoa. Okay. Sailboat through the windshield.
Yeah.
And the G-Go part.
Add the senses. Hear the glass shatter. Smell the salty sea air. Maybe see a flapping fish on the dashboard. For zone B, maybe B is bread. Imagine your car is suddenly an oven completely stuffed with giant, steaming loaves of bread. Feel the heat, smell the baking bread.
Sailboat crashing in, car full of hot bread. That is definitely memorable and weird.
That's the point. A pro tip from the sources. If you park often, try to connect the image to something about that specific day or trip to keep images from different parking times distinct. Oh, and yeah, parking roughly in the same area helps too, obviously.
Huh, good point. Okay, what about just putting something down, like keys or my phone, and instantly forgetting where?
Again, usually attention. The absolute best solution is habit. Have one designated spot for keys, phone, wallet. Always put them there.
The trusty key bowl by the door.
Exactly. But if that fails, or isn't possible, there's a quick technique called move it or lose it. It's basically an instant mini C-Link Go. As you put the item down, you do something really weird or out of place with it, or while doing it.
Like instead of putting my keys on the counter, I balance them dramatically on top of a pineapple.
Perfect. Or you toss your phone gently onto the sofa with a ridiculous flourish, maybe shouting, "Ta-da!" That weird action forces your brain to pay attention. It flags the moment as unusual. The image of the keys, SE, is linked to the pineapple, and the balancing act makes it stick.
Okay, deliberate weirdness to force attention. I like it. Now, the big one. Names and faces. Everyone struggles with this.
Probably the most common requests, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it starts with attention. Are you really listening to the name? Are you really looking at the face? Often we're too busy thinking, oh, what we're going to say next.
True. So pay attention first. Then what?
Here, the ilinke comes first. The person's face is the anchor, the cue you'll have later. So look at their face. Really look and find a distinguishing feature. Anything that stands out, even slightly. A prominent nose, unusual eyebrows, a particular hairstyle.
Okay, find a feature on the face, link to that.
Then see the name, turn the name itself into an image or a series of images. You might need to break it down. The sources use Donovan. Break it into Don and Van. Picture maybe a Don Juan type character and a van.
Got it. Don Juan, van, now, ego, and connect it.
Exactly. Go. Make those images interact vividly with the feature you picked, your LANK. If Donovan has a high forehead, imagine Don Juan driving that van recklessly across his forehead. Make it absurd, sensory. For Patrick McDougal, maybe you find his forehead distinctive again. You can break it down. Patrick McDougal, picture yourself patting dogs wearing burger buns right there on his forehead. Maybe he had a hockey stick if you mentioned liking hockey. Yeah.
Patting bun-wearing dogs on his forehead while holding a hockey stick. Okay, that is deeply weird, but I can see how it would stick. Linking the name image directly to the face.
It sounds crazy, but it works because it's concrete, visual, and anchored to the cue you'll see again. And like Dale Carnegie advised, using the name right away, nice to meet you, Donovan, and maybe mentally reviewing it later helps cement it.
This is fascinating. So we've covered practical stuff. What about different kinds of information, like numbers? They feel impossible sometimes.
Numbers are tough because they're so abstract. For single digits, you can use simple systems like number shape 4 looks like a sail, 7 looks like a cliff, or number rhyme 1 bun, 2 shoe. These are okay for short sequences.
But for phone numbers, credit cards, long stuff.
Yeah, for longer numbers, you need systems to chunk them and turn them into images. The sources talk about the major system, which is ingenious. It turns numbers into consonant sounds.
How does that work? Sounds complicated.
It takes a little learning, but it's logical. Each digit gets a consonant sound. 1 is TD, 2 is N, 3 is M, 4 is R, 5 is L, 6 is JH, 7 is KGD, is FV, 9 is BB, 0 is SZ. You ignore vowels. So the number 35 becomes M plus L sounds. You make a word. Meal, meal, moil, mile. You pick one you can picture easily, like meal. Now, meal is your image for 35.
Okay. M for 3, L for 5. Meal. I see. So you turn number chunks into image words.
Exactly. And memory champs string these images together using the journey method. But even more powerful for long numbers is the PAO system.
Person, action, object.
That's the one. You create a list where every number from 00 to 99 has a pre-assigned person, an action, and an object. For example, maybe 16 is Arnold Schwarzenegger, person. Shooting action, a chalkboard object. Maybe 35 is Clint Eastwood, person. Drawing action, a gun, object.
Whoa, that's 100 persons' actions and objects to memorize.
It's an investment, definitely. But look at the payoff. To remember a 6-digit number like, say, 16, 35, 15, you take the person for 16, Arnold, the action for 35, drawing maybe, and the object for 15. Let's say 15 is towel. Your image for a 163515 is Arnold drawing a towel. One image encodes 6 digits.
Arnold drawing a towel instead of 3 separate images. That's incredibly efficient.
Massively. Perfect for credit cards, pi digits, anything long. For a phone number, you'd convert the number into a sequence of PAO images, or major system images, and then link that sequence to the person's face using C-Link Go.
Okay, numbers need systems. What about text, like remembering a quote?
For short quotes, the sources suggest the first letter method as a quick capture tool. You jot down the first letter of each word plus punctuation. May we be in heaven becomes real by BHTDKTBD.
That looks like gibberish.
It does, but it captures the structure. You're not memorizing the letters. You use that letter sequence as a scaffold. You can then create images for chunks of those letters or link them somehow, maybe on a mini journey. It's a way to quickly grab the blueprint so you can encode it properly later.
Ah, a temporary holding pattern. And for longer stuff, like a poem.
Journey method? All the way. Create your memory palace. Break the poem into lines or meaningful phrases. Turn each phrase into a C+Go image and place it at a location along your journey.
So line one's image is at my front door, line two's image is in the hallway, line three on the stairs.
Exactly. You walk the journey, the locations trigger the images trigger the lines. The sources mention using U.S. cities as locations for a poem stanza. Miami triggers the image for line 1, D.C. triggers line 2, and so on. You can be flexible about how much text each image represents.
Makes sense. What about dates? Remembering birthdays or appointments?
Similar idea. Combine images. For August 18th, maybe your image for August is a back-to-school kid, since school starts then. Your image for 18 might be an angsty teen, number, shape, or major system for 18 TF tough.
Yeah.
The event is a cruise, Elling Lake Helvem. The back-to-school kid and the angsty teen are fighting over the steering wheel of the cruise ship. Go! Make it absurd.
Angsty teen fighting a kid for control of a cruise ship for August 18th. Got it.
It's memorable. The sources also briefly mention things like the doomsday calculation for figuring out the day of the week for any date. That's a different beast, more about memorizing specific number lists and doing mental math, not just imagery.
Okay, so we've covered the core C-Linko, the journey and peg methods, and applying them to names, numbers, text, to dates. But it's not just about learning techniques, right? The sources talk about training your memory overall.
Yes, absolutely crucial. First big point, you have to start trusting your memory more. Forgetting doesn't mean your brain is broken. It usually means you didn't give it the right input, you didn't pay attention, or use a good technique.
So belief is part of it. Believing you can improve.
Definitely. And tied to that is attention. Using these techniques actually forces you to pay better attention. You can't create a vivid image or link it properly if you're distracted. It trains your focus muscle, almost like a side effect. It's meta-memory, being aware of how you're remembering.
That's a cool benefit. And practice makes perfect, presumably.
Like any skill, memory is presented as a muscle. You need consistent practice. Start small, memorize shopping lists, phone numbers, decks of cards maybe. Build confidence. Memory champions train constantly, getting into that flow state.
Are there lifestyle things too? Diet? Supplement?
The sources align with general health advice.
Yeah.
What's good for the body is good for the brain. They specifically mention DHA, the omega-3 from fish oil, suggesting around 900 milligrams daily based on cognitive studies.
Okay, fish oil. Anything else?
There's mention of potential benefit from low-carb or ketogenic diets for focus, reducing brain fog, but also a strong caution against ineffective supplements. Ginkgo biloba is mentioned as lacking solid proof and potentially having downsides.
Good to know. And what about actually making memories last?
Spaced repetition. This is huge. We naturally forget things over time, the forgetting curve. To fight that, you need to revisit the information you've learned. But the key is increasing the intervals between reviews. Reviews soon after learning, then a bit later, then later still. This strengthens the neural pathways for long-term storage. There are apps like Anki or Memrise that automate this schedule.
Right, review but strategically spaced out.
Exactly. So let's kind of bring this all together, reiterate the main takeaways. Memory isn't some fixed thing you're born with. It's absolutely trainable.
Yeah, it's a skill built on techniques.
And the foundation is translating abstract stuff your brain doesn't like into vivid, sensory, bizarre images. That's the S.
Then anchoring those images firmly to something you already know, like a place or a face, the L-E-N-C-O.
And making that whole scene dynamic, interactive, sensory, and absurd, the gay-go. This taps into your brain's natural strengths for visuals and location.
And getting better involves practice, trusting your brain's ability, and crucially paying focused attention in the first place.
We've seen how turning facts, names, numbers into these wild mental movies linked to familiar paths or pegs can make almost anything stick. It feels kind of like a superpower, but it's really just applying these learnable methods.
It really drives home that the potential is already inside you. These are just the tools to unlock that potential. It does take that conscious effort, that attention and practice, but you can do it.
And here's a final thought. If improving memory is fundamentally about paying closer attention, being more present, and creatively organizing information in a way your brain finds engaging, What else in your life might become richer, more enjoyable, more fully experienced if you simply brought that same level of deliberate attention and active mental engagement to it?